He saw her the same moment she saw him. When he wiped away his tears, Nancy, too, was gone. So, let's see. There's Henry, and there are his children. And they're being taken away. They were sold. And you could see by their faces, they're really upset. Think about that, how that would feel, being a little child like you are, guys. And you were sold and taken away from your parents to go work for a stranger that now owns you. Henry no longer sang. He couldn't hum. He went to work, and at night he ate supper, which is dinner, and went to bed. Henry tried to think of happy times, but all he could see were the carts carrying away everyone he loved. Henry knew he would never see his family again. And here he is, heartbroken. His wife, his children, all taken away from him. Many weeks passed. One morning, Henry heard singing. A little bird flew out of a tree into the open sky, and Henry thought about being free. But how? As he lifted a crate, he knew the answer. He asked James and Dr. Smith to help him. Dr. Smith was a white man who thought slavery was wrong. They met early the next day at an empty warehouse. Henry arrived with a box. "I will mail myself to a place where there are no slaves," he said. James stared at the box, then at Henry. "What if you cough and someone hears you?" "I will cover my mouth and hope," Henry said. So this is Henry, his friend James, and Dr. Smith. And they said Dr. Smith is a white man, but he was a white man that thought slavery was bad. He did not agree with slavery. So this makes it a little more complicated to understand, because at the time of slavery, white people, mostly white men, owned black people and brown people, and treated them terribly, and treated them like they were objects. But there were some white people that thought slavery was wrong. Most didn't. Most owned black and brown people. But some white people thought slavery was not right and did not agree with it. And so Dr. Smith is an example of a white person that did not agree with slavery. And they agreed to help Henry try to mail himself. So we get boxes from Amazon, right? But Henry thought, I'm going to mail myself to freedom. I'm going to put myself in a crate, which is like a wooden box. And he's going to send himself like a package to a place in America that did not have slavery, where he would be a free black man, not an enslaved black man. It's an interesting idea. Do you think it'll work? Dr. Smith said, "What happens if you sneeze? Someone will know you're in there. You'll get caught." I wonder. Dr. Smith wrote on the box, "To William H. Johnson, Ark Street, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania." Henry would be delivered to friends in Philadelphia. Then he printed on the crate in big letters, "This side up with care." So he's sending the box to friends in Philadelphia with Henry in it. I wonder if it'll work. Henry needed an excuse to stay home, or the work boss would think he had run off. James pointed to Henry's sore finger, but Henry knew it wasn't bad enough. He opened a bottle of oil of vitriol. "No!" cried James. Henry poured it on his hand. It burned his skin to the bone. Now the boss would have to let him stay home. Dr. Smith bandaged Henry's hand. They arranged to meet the next morning at 4 o'clock. So if Henry didn't show up for work, right, his owner, the person that forced him to work, they would know that he tried to escape. So he had to give himself an injury so that he could stay home because he was hurt. Again, no one should hurt themselves on purpose, right? That's not a good idea. But it was the only way that he could be free, right? To try to escape. So it shows how desperate he was, how badly he wanted to escape and try to find freedom. Again, it's not good to hurt yourself. It's not a good choice. The sun was not yet up when Henry climbed into the box. "Ready," he said. James nailed down the lid. Dr. Smith and James drove to the station. The railway clerk tipped the box over and nailed a paper to the bottom. Dr. Smith begged the clerks to be careful, but they didn't listen. They threw the box into the baggage car. So they threw the box into the baggage car because they didn't know that Henry was in it. Henry, that probably hurt Henry. Hours passed. Henry was lifted up and thrown again, upside down. He heard waves splashing. This must be the steamboat headed for Washington, D.C. The ship rode smoothly, but Henry was still upside down. Blood rushed to his head. His face got hot. His eyes ached. He thought his head would burst, but he was afraid to move. Someone might hear him. So that's him squished in the box. He heard waves, which means he was traveling on a boat. "I'm tired of standing," someone said. "Why don't we move that box and sit on it?" said another. Henry held his breath. Could they be talking about his box? Henry was pushed. The box scraped the deck. Now he was on his right side, now on his left side, and suddenly, right side up. Henry's in there, in that box. But no one knows, and they can't find out, or he would get in big trouble, or even killed. Slaves were not allowed to escape. "What do you think's in here?" the first man said. "Mail, I guess," said the other. "I am mail," thought Henry, but not the kind they imagine. Henry was carried off the steamboat and placed in a railroad car, this time head up. He fell asleep to the rattling song of the train wheels. So they don't know Henry's in there. He's hiding, trying to escape to freedom. He awoke to loud knocking. "Henry, are you all right in there?" "All right," he answered. The cover was pried open. Henry stretched and stood up. 4 men smiled at him. "Welcome to Philadelphia." He made it. He made it to freedom. At last, Henry had a birthday, March 30th, 1849, his first day of freedom. And from that day on, he also had a middle name. Everyone called him Henry Box Brown. How do you think Henry's feeling right now? Probably relieved, right? And free. So, that was a tough book, huh? That he went through so much, right? things that we take for granted. So this book is especially important, I think, around the holiday, around Thanksgiving, because there are so many people in the past and even today that do not have happy lives. They are not treated with fairness or equality. And some people don't get to see their families, right? Forever, for good. Not the same as, mommy's family living in Ohio, because we will get to see them again. But there are some people in the world that are not free. They're enslaved. And there are people in the world that are mistreated, right? And hurt. And Henry was one of them, simply because he had black skin. He had brown skin. And he was born into slavery. He was a slave. He was an enslaved person. And that was the only reason that he had a life different than yours, was because he was born in the past and he had dark skin. So I think this book is an accurate picture into how hard the lives of enslaved people were. Something that we will never understand as white people. But I think it's good to read stories and to learn more about that perspective. Because I think it makes us definitely sensitive to it, right? It helps us with empathy for others and their experiences, but also it makes us feel really thankful. It makes us realize how lucky we are. Not only to be white, because there are things that are easier for us in life because we have white skin, unfortunately and fortunately. And it helps us to imagine life, what life is like for somebody else that's not as fortunate, right? So we can talk about this book when I get home from work, or you could talk about it with Daddy too, just in case you have questions. And I want you to, after you watch this video, to go back and look at the pictures, because I think some of them are hard to see, but I think they're important. And look at the faces of these characters, of these people, because Henry Box Brown really existed in real life. This is a true story. To get an idea of what life was like for him and his family. All right. I will see you when I get home from work. I miss you and I love you, and I'll see you soon. Bye.